Hi, I am Dennis from Inflectra. In this tutorial we will see how to integrate Rapise and Azure DevOps. Here is the plan of the tutorial. First we will create an Azure DevOps project. Then we will clone this Git project to a local machine and open it in Visual Studio. In Visual Studio we will create a unit test project and integrate it with Rapise, and we'll run Rapise tests locally using Test Explorer in Visual Studio. Then we will commit and push our changes to Azure DevOps Git repository. In Azure DevOps, we will download and then locally configure Azure DevOps agent that will be connecting to Azure DevOps server and listening for jobs to execute on this local machine. Then we will create a build pipeline and configure the test task in Azure DevOps. And then we will run multiple tests and review execution results, and we'll see how to understand why a test failed and view its report. So let's begin. First, I need to create an Azure DevOps project. So I'm going to my Azure DevOps space and provide project name. Checking that Git is used as version control, and now I click on Create Project button. Okay, now I have a project. Next step is to clone the Git repository we just created to a local machine. For this purpose, I am navigating to repos part of my dashboard. In the section Clone to your computer, I select Clone to Visual Studio option and click Open Link. Visual Studio prompts me to clone the repository, and I confirm this. Okay, so now I have my repository on the local machine. I have the Git repository on my local machine, and now I need to create a unit test project and integrate it with Rapise. So the empty repository is opened in Visual Studio, and I need to create a new solution. While creating a new solution, I select unit test project template. Let's give it a name. Visual Studio creates a unit test project, and now I need to integrate it with Rapise. To get the steps, I navigate to Rapise documentation. And documentation for Visual Studio integration is inside Rapise User's Guide, Features, Unit Testing, Visual Studio. And here in the Unit Test Mapping section, I have a guide how to integrate Visual Studio Unit Testing project with Rapise. So first step, I need to add a reference to a specific DLL which is supplied with Rapise. So let's copy the path to the folder where DLL is located. I'm going to Windows Explorer. So this is my repository that I just cloned from Azure DevOps, and now it has the unit test project. So let's go to the folder mentioned in the documentation. Here is the DLL that we need. I copy this DLL and paste it into the project that I just created. So let's put it here. All right, so returning to Visual Studio project, go to Solution Explorer, expand References, and choose Add Reference. Choose Browse, And where I need to go to my repository, find the DLL and add it to my project. The DLL is also automatically added by Visual Studio to the repository. The next thing I will do is I will go to project settings. I have Visual Studio 2015, and by default it creates a project with .NET Framework 4. I will change it to 4.5.2. This is the framework used to build the DLL we just referenced. Okay, so now in my unit test project, I am going to do the following. So let's go to the documentation. First, I need to add test context variable to my unit test class. So go in here, insert it. Then to execute my test, I need to call Rapise test execute method. Go into Visual Studio, return in here. So let's rename this test method to something, create new book test method. So Rapise is unknown, so let's fix it. Adding using SES with unit reference. So this is the class available in the DLL that I referenced. All right, so here what we have in the test execute method, we provide a path to Rapise test to execute. It must be an absolute path, and it should be exactly the same on different machines where you are going to execute this test. So I have this test at exactly this specific location. So let's build our project. It should build successfully. All right, one thing to mention. To execute Rapise test, Visual Studio must be running as administrator. So since my Visual Studio was opened without administrator rights from Firefox browser when I did the clone of repository, I am going to close Visual Studio at this point and then launch it from scratch as administrator. And I'm going to open my solution that I just created. So here it is, opening it. Now Visual Studio is running with administrator privileges. Let's go to Team Explorer, Test Explorer. Here is the test method I just created. And now I'm ready to just execute this test. So running selected tests. Okay, this test creates a new book in the library information system. Okay, so everything executed successfully. And what I have in Visual Studio. So let's expand this section. Clicking on the output, and I can see the status of execution. The test passed successfully, and I can review results. So Rapise attaches execution reports in two formats. One is test anything protocol format, human readable, and another format is TRP. This is Rapise native format that we can open in Rapise. So let's see how it looks like. So our test executed successfully, and we can see the steps. So now we are able to integrate unit test project on the local machine and execute the test on the local machine and review the results. To get all these files we created in Azure DevOps our Git repository, we need to commit and push changes. So I am returning to Visual Studio, navigating to Team Explorer, going to changes here, and we can see the changes. All the files of the unit test project are added automatically by Visual Studio. Also, the reference to the DLL is also here. So our DLL is added to Git repository. So committing the changes. This is initial version of my unit testing project. Clicking commit all. So everything is committed locally, and now I need to push this to remote. Clicking on the thing, choosing push. Okay, so successfully pushed to origin master. So let's return to our Azure DevOps dashboard. Go into files, and here I can see my unit testing project with all the files and with the DLL that provides integration of Azure DevOps with Rapise. By default, Azure DevOps builds and runs projects in the cloud, but there is no Rapise in the cloud, and to execute Rapise tests we need to configure Azure DevOps agent. So this is how to do it. Let's go to Rapise documentation, to Azure DevOps section, and scroll down to self-hosted Windows agents section. So let's go to the documentation, how to install and configure self-hosted Windows agent. So here it is. Now I am going to download and configure the agent section, and it says that to configure the agent we need to navigate to this URL. So let's navigate this URL. Here is the root URL for my repository. So I am pasting it here. And then based on their DevOps documentation, I need to add settings agent pool part here. Okay, paste. Navigating to the page. So, and what I see, I now see the list of agent pools configured in Azure DevOps, and most of them are hosted environment, and I will use default agent pool and will configure my local agent with this pool. So first I need to download the agent. For this purpose I click on download agent button, and downloading the correct version of agent for my Windows environment. Clicking download, save. So it takes a while to download the agent. So it will be finished soon, and it will end up in my downloads folder. Then when it is downloaded, we will need to extract the files. So I'm going to the downloads folder, right clicking it, choosing extract all, extracting everything here. When agent files are ready, we need to first configure the agent and then run it. So to configure the agent, we need to execute the config cmd. This is one of the two cmd files in the agent folder. I will run it as administrator, and I have a prompt that Windows protected my PC, but I want to run it anyway. All right, so and now I am getting some questions from the configure procedure. I need to enter server URL. Okay, my server URL is this one. copy and paste it here. Okay, authentication type is PAD by default. And now the system prompts me for personal access token. I need to create one. To do that, I return to my Azure DevOps dashboard, clicking on the account icon in the top right corner and go into security section. Here in the security section, I have a personal access token part, and I need to create a new personal access token. Click on New Token button and provide in the name. Let's name it Rapise token. It has an expiration date, so you can increase the default number here, for example 90 days. And what I need to configure for this personal access token is I need to give it access to agent pools and read and manage privileges. So click and create. When Azure DevOps generates the token, it shows this token you just once. So make sure when you copy this token, you will store it somewhere. It will be needed to configure the agent once again if it is needed, or you can create a new token at any time. So if you will lose it, it's not a big deal. Okay, I copied the security token, pasting it here, enter. So my agent pool has name default. Here is the default host name of my local machine. Okay, I am submitting the default options. Okay, I do not want to run the agent as a service, do not want to run it at startup. So configuration is okay. Let's return to the folder of my agent, and now I can run it, running it as administrator. It is now connecting to the server, and now it is listening for jobs. So let's return to the dashboard and to our agent pools. Okay, you can see that in the default agent pool, we have a new agent, and this agent is online, so it is connected to Azure DevOps. We created a unit test project and configured the Azure DevOps agent on the local machine. And to run the unit tests through Azure DevOps, we need to configure build or release pipeline and configure the test task in this pipeline. So I am returning to the dashboard and going to my project, to pipelines section, builds, and clicking new pipeline button. In Azure DevOps, you can configure pipeline in two ways. You can use yet another markup language if you are an experienced user, or you can use wizards. Microsoft frequently changes things, and the wizards can look differently. And I will use the classic editor, which is still available. I'm selecting Azure Repos Git. This is where my repository is located. Choosing the master branch, clicking continue. My unit tests are a .NET desktop application, so I'm choosing this option. And by default, this template for .NET desktop application contains a test assemblies step. And what this step does is it runs all the unit tests included into solution. So now I'm ready to execute my tests. So I can save and queue my pipeline. Everything will be pushed to repository, and here I can select on which agent pool I want to execute my tests. So since my local Azure DevOps agent is inside default pool, I'm choosing default one. And now I click Save and Run. Azure DevOps commits changes, and now it will execute the tests. So since my local agent is connected to Azure DevOps, it will now receive the commands from the Azure DevOps server. So let's see. Now the agent is downloading all the files of the repository to a temporary folder. Then it will build the files and then will execute the unit tests. Okay, so far so good. Now we should see Rapise executing the test. Okay, after execution is completed, the agent will automatically upload execution results to Azure DevOps repository. Okay, agent job 1 is completed and result is succeeded. And in Azure DevOps dashboard, we can see execution results. To see the results of our tests, I click on the tests tab here, and I can see how many tests passed or failed. And if there are failed tests, I'll be able to view the report to see where the test actually failed. Let's now see how to run multiple tests and to view the results of failed tests. I'm returning to Visual Studio, to my unit test project. Here I have just one test for execution, and I'm going to add a new one. So let's create a new test method. For this purpose, I will just copy existing one. Copy it here. And I have a test that fails at specific point. So I will name it test to fail. And this test is located in new test folder. New test folder. So let's first check it locally. I will build my solution. Everything is fine. Go into Test Explorer, and now I have two tests here. Let's run test to fail. Test is executing, and now we can see that the test failed. Let's go to output and view the test anything protocol report. So we can see that assertion 5 failed in this test. Okay, so now let's commit and push the changes to Azure DevOps repository. So I am returning to Team Explorer. Go into changes section, test to fail example, committing my changes, and now I need to push my changes to the repository. Okay, successfully pushed to the repository. Let's return to the dashboard and to the pipelines. So here is our pipeline, and I can edit the pipeline, and actually I can specify the default agent here and say let's save and queue. to execute it immediately. Saving and running it. Here is our agent. And one of the tests will pass. It will be Internet Explorer browser test. And the second one will fail, and we'll be able to see the report of the failed test in Azure DevOps dashboard. Okay, second test is executing. Let's go to the dashboard, and we can see that some of the tests failed. To see what was wrong, let's go to Tests tab. Here we can see that one test passed and one failed. Here is the list of failed tests. I can click on the test. I can see where it failed, and in the attachment section I have last TAP and last TRP files with the report. So I can view the tab file. I can download it and open, and to see the failure. And also I can download and view the TRP file. It will be opened with Rapise by default. Okay, so here is where our test failed. So this is basically how you can integrate Rapise and Azure DevOps. So thank you for watching.